Hey, Taylor Elwood here with Magical Experiments Podcast, and I'm super excited because today I have Tommie Kelly with me. Now, normally I do these interviews of late live on Substack, but Wi-Fi signals aren't always the most firm and dedicated things. So we decided to opt for Zoom, and I'm really happy to have Tommie here. Tommie, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, and let's get into it.
Okay, so I'm Tommie Kelly. I'm born, raised, and still in Ireland for my sins. Um, I'm an artist, writer, musician, and numerous other hats. But I started writing, I suppose, about spiritual magic and occult topics late 2014, 2015. But the actual my blog itself, Adventures in Woo, started January the 1st, 2015. Um, where I just come as rather than I found an awful lot of blogs and people at the time who were in occulture, as it's become known, were kind of talking from a place of ascendancy or certainty, or at the kind of the end of a journey, and then talking down, not down. I don't mean in a patronising way, but talking from a height. And there was very few people talking about the whole thing from a practitioner's point of view or person within it, rather than someone who's like a teacher at the end who could, impart the wisdom to the great unwashed or the general masses. But so that was the idea of the blog, was to talk, have a blog about someone who was going through all the stuff, who was like in the middle of it, who was in the trenches, as to where, rather than a teaching blog or someone coming from a place of authority. So that's 10 years or so of doing that, and that blossomed into podcasts, vlogs, numerous other forms of media. And then I also did the 40 Servants, which is like a divination oracle deck that also doubles as a magic system, and Four Devils, and lots of other stuff. But that's basically the big picture of who I am.
Well, you sound like a very interesting person. I'm sorry we haven't
Well,
talked
I wouldn't go
sooner.
that far.
Well, I mean, but we haven't talked. I'm sorry we haven't talked sooner, but I'm glad that we're talking now. This is pretty cool. And it's interesting because I think I've been practicing magic for like about 33 years now, and I've tried. I mean, I definitely have written a number of books. I've done other stuff, but I've always tried to approach it from the perspective of like, okay, like here I'm an experimenter. I'm curious about stuff. Here's where we're at. Like here's what we're trying to do, and here's where I failed and made mistakes, things like that. Stuff I don't see a lot of the people out there sharing because I think it's like, well, let's get real here. Like we all
Yeah.
like nobody has it completely figured out. I mean, and at 33 years of practice, I still have a lot of things that I'm figuring out. In fact, one of the sayings I have is challenge what you know to discover what you can learn, because the reality is that like anytime I think I know something, at that point I put blinders on, and it actually limits me from experiencing what I could learn.
Yeah.
What do you think about that as as a magical philosophy, or really just a philosophy for living life?
No, I think it's very true, and I think it can become a trap very much within any sphere of life. But let's talk about it in the magic sphere or in the like a spiritual sphere, in that you can become very contracted in your views, and you can become very set in your ways, and you can refuse to kind of see that. And by I'm talking about myself, including this. I'm not as if it's other people. It's me too. You can refuse to kind of go out of your a kind of a boundary or a delineation that you've put on yourself. And you can find this very much, I find, being that I've spent an awful lot of time in chaos magic circles, it's something that it really does happen in chaos magic circles, which is weird, given that the remit of chaos magic is ostensibly a more open kind of broad, or open up the gates of these things. But people can become um, very set
Dogmatic?
in, well, dogmatic, yeah, which is weird for like a chaos magic thing, because it's like the one of the kind of tenets of it, one of the kind of germs of it, was to get rid of dogma. But it certainly has its own set of dogma. It really does at this point, or at least people act like it does, which is just the same. And this kind of thing of that you have to do things a certain way, or that I suppose that one of the things I think what happens with it is, and one of the faults, if there is a fault, as I see it with a chaos magic approach, is that when you kind of banish traditions or how it's been done, or the kind of influence of what is seen as, I suppose, in one sense, the enemy. Like the kind of established ways of doing things, and you can kind of get into a place of just doing stuff that is just to your preference or to your personal aesthetic or resonates with you or has some sort of, it's me. It's and the idea with case magic is do the thing that works, not do the thing that feels right. But it's turned into do the thing that feels right, and it's kind of people then talk about, oh well, it's not working out. It's not, I'm not getting what I want. And you kind of go, well, what are you doing? And you can find an awful lot of time, and not all the time, that people have just abandoned all kind of history or tradition or any kind of learning or anything like that in favor of just doing something that feels like magic to them or looks like magic to them, or more than that, it's like what they want magic to be rather than what it is. And it's kind of, well, why isn't it working? He goes, well, you know why does the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram work? If we say it does, you need to do it a number of times to find out what it is. And I think what in case magic, what people do is immediately throw it out and just immediately go to, having rather than the angels because they don't like the angels to put in something else, which I think is a very workable thing to do. But you have to know why you're doing it and why the original thing works in the first place before you go to your preference.
I
Um,
completely agree with you on that. And it's funny, I have my own story of dogma. Back in the 1990s, I was experimenting, late 1990s, I was experimenting with pop culture magic. I had the idea of integrating pop culture into magic. And I was I was living in State College and I had reached out to the local chapter of the Temple of Psychic Youth, and so, chaos magicians, right? So I'm sharing like what I'm doing with pop culture magic, and the guy that's there stuffily says to me, "That's not real magic." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "But I'm doing all the thing. Like I have this foundation. Like I've learned X, Y, and Z. I've read these books. Admittedly, I self-taught myself, but this stuff seems to work. And what I'm doing is I'm replacing some of this stuff with pop culture, but I'm still getting the same results.
mm,
That's not real magic."
yeah,
And it was funny. I mean, it was kind of a funny thing. It helped me to see, like, for me, it was kind of a determination of, okay, like this person isn't creative enough. And so I was like, okay, that's, I still learned some stuff from him. Good guy,
yeah.
but
But the
but it
key
was
to that is the key to what you're saying there is that you were getting the results, and that's the important bit. Like it's all well and good to change all of these things or do it in your own way, if if you're getting the results. Chaos magic being a results based thing, but you have to be actually getting the things you want. And an awful lot of time, it seems to be that people are changing stuff and not getting the results. Now, that's not to claim in any way that if you did it everything 100% right, that you would have everything you ever wanted either. I'm not saying that. But it's just kind of locking into, well, coming from what you were saying, locking into a particular way of looking at things. And that can be, like, as you are pointing out, that can be the opposite way of not exploring enough or not doing your own things or not following your own preferences. Just another kind of flip of the coin that you come with all these rules, these or dogmas or whatever way you want to look at them, or beliefs or whatever, and try to shoehorn them into something, and then rather than, as I see it, if magic is anything, it's the opposite of a contraction. It's the opposite of conservatism. It's the opposite of retreat. It's the opposite of putting things in a box. It's the expansive creative principle. It's like, I suppose, that kind of notion of Shakti from Eastern religions, this kind of thing that goes outwards. And there's an awful lot of stuff. Um, I think an awful lot of people somehow mistake magic for mysticism and mysticism for magic. Where there's one seems very much like mysticism is a contraction or returning to something. Like the good old days, only in a kind of spiritual sense of or a Gnostic sense of it used to be good, but there was something happened and now it's all bad, and you have to get back to the good bit. And it seems something very
well, there's
in the air about that.
yeah, there is. I mean, I agree with you that I think people need to have a strong, solid foundation. I mean, that's what I tell people. Like, if you want to experiment with magic, first you have to understand what you're doing, and that means that you need to get at least a solid 2 or 3 years of experience under your belt, just learning what other people have done, practicing it, figuring out like what's working and what isn't, finding the gap, things like that. That's something that I advocate for. It's not just go and do what feels right. You have to understand what you're doing. And if you don't understand what you're doing, then you're not going to get the results. Now, With all this, I think what's interesting is that lately you've been sharing some articles where you've been exploring, and I've been writing some response articles because I'm a responsive kind of guy, and I love it when people write stuff that makes me think. You've been writing some articles about your own journey and experience with magic and how it's taken a turn. So could you share a little bit about that, and kind of like what you've been experiencing and discovering?
Yeah, so over the last while, I've been just talking to various people I talk to, and various occultists or magicians or whatever label they would put on themselves. There's a real sense, not with everyone, but with enough people for it to be a pattern or to be something worth considering. A lot of people feeling that they're not engaging with magic in the way they used to, or they're not getting it working in the way it used to, or there's like a bit of the pop or the sheen or something has lost, as if a bit of the juice has gone from it. And I had noticed that myself, and so I began wondering about all of that, those type of things, and what is it? And one of the things that came up, looking into it, was this idea that when you start something, um, you're more willing to accept success than you are later on. In the sense of, say you're learning a sport, you think you're better at it at the beginning until you learn a bit more about what it actually means to be good at that, and then you look back and go, oh, well, I'm not as good. I wasn't as good as I thought at the beginning. But in a beginner's kind of mindset, there is this kind of sense of that you're doing well. So in a magic thing, you get you do a sigil for money, and you find $1, and you go, oh, success, magic works. But 10 years down the line, doing a sigil for money and getting $1 just doesn't do anything for you, because, you've already, you're looking for something greater. So it feels like your magic is not working in the way it used to. Oh, I used to get loads of successes, but now I can't even get $1. But yet it's just that your kind of view of it has changed. You become a bit more, I suppose, wise about it, or educated about it, or you've travelled a bit more, so you understand that things are not as impressive as they would have been. And there is a certain sense of, I know from doing kind of group experiments, as I used to call them, in a particular Facebook group, Chaos Magic group back in the day, where we try to manifest a half peeled orange by whatever means necessary. And realizing just how a non half peeled orange success people would accept, from a small bit of an orange peel to the color orange to someone mentioning an orange. And there's always, a lot of people counting that as a success. I was going, well, that's interesting, because that's clearly not, as far as I was concerned, not a success. Because if you're manifesting or magicking or whatever for a particular target, and you don't get that target, that's a failure. It's, in the sense of, you either get the $50 or you don't get the $50. If you get 45, is that a success? And at what point? 45 might be okay. It's 30. It's 25 okay? When, where is your cutoff line? So I think there's a lot of that. People looking back, thinking that their magic worked an awful lot better because they weren't as discerning as they are now. But I also think there's a kind of a sense that, I suppose as you get older and stuff like that, you realize how little autonomy and sovereignty and say you have in the world and in your life, and maybe that your kind of goals are become a bit more up against the stuff that you can't change, and so that you're not really too concerned with the kind of, let me say, for want of a better word, frivolous magic, or just getting laid, or whatever, having parties, or whatever the stuff that you were into when you're young. And now it's kind of more, well, I want a bit more freedom, I want a bit more authority, or I want to be able to have a say in my life. And then you realize, oh, hold on, I don't have any of those things, and you're fighting a kind of a losing battle. So again, all the stuff that you want, your kind of magic targets, aren't in a sense really achievable, because it's not, that's not the world we live in. So I think there's a kind of stuff like that. And then there's the suggestion too that because effectively the world is constantly on fire these days, that there's just so much possibly psychic energy or too much noise or something, that we've all come a bit unfocused, or any amount of things. But what I have certainly noticed is that to the point that I don't really do magic now, because I kind of feel like, what's the point? Because it's not, and so it's not happening for me. So it's kind of as if I've moved more into a more of a almost Buddhist type of thought, but I'm not a Buddhist by any stretch of means. Maybe a more kind of Shive, Kashmir Shaivism point of view or something on it, where rather than looking for the solution through magic. So say an example would be, say you are a very horny person and you spend all your time wanting to have sex, and then you do magic to have all any amount of partners you want or any more interactions or whatever, and that's never going to be, even if it works, even if all your magic works, that you're never going to be fulfilled, in the sense you always want more of that, more of that, more of that. So it's a continuing process that can never end. Whereas if you kind of look at the causes of that and go, well, if I was just a less horny person, then I wouldn't have all of these issues. I wouldn't have all of these problems. And it's kind of trying to approach my magic now, or my spiritual outlook or whatever, is going, the things that I am magicking for, or the changes I want in my life, or my desires and all of that, what are the reasons for them? And rather than trying to mend or treat the the disease that's come out of it, or kind of the that kind of, it's go back to the original, the underlying condition, and see what am I trying to actually do here? What am I trying to feel? What am I trying to escape? What am I trying to improve? What am I doing? And look at it more in that kind of sense, because that seems like something that I could have a say in. Whereas if I'm trying to magic for like results, or the to change my conditions, and that seems endless. That doesn't seem like there's an end to that. That's going to be something you would do for the rest of your life. Um,
So I
whereas,
really resonate with all that.
yeah,
And a large part is because I've definitely been there, done that a few times in my magical career.
mm,
I think that not enough people talk about this like openly. And that's one of the reasons I really started to, like, when I read your articles, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And I started writing some of my own responses because it was like, this is really neat to see somebody having this conversation. And I wanted to share my own thoughts and experiences around it. And it's one of the reasons we're doing this, because I think that this needs to be talked about more. I agree with you. Like, there was a period of time where it was like, yeah, I was like, oh, I want to change these things in the world around me. And then at some point it shifted and oriented toward, I need to change myself from the inside out, and then things may change. And a lot has changed in my life. And I still practice magic. I do a daily ritual that actually that is really helpful for me. But I don't always do a lot of magic for like specific concrete results. Now I have done some pretty impressive stuff. I mean, the house I'm living in is a great example of magic that I did to get a house.
mm,
So I know that magic works. But the difference is that now I practice magic from a perspective of life design. Instead of
okay,
trying to get a short-term result like getting laid, it's what kind of, if I were going to do magic, it would be for something like that. It would be more along the lines of, what kind of magic do I want to do where it's around actually setting up the foundations for a successful relationship. And that means that, first of all, I need to know what my values are, and I need to date for value by values. So like, does this person have a sense of integrity? Does this person have a sense of responsibility? Is she going to care about something, or is she just going to use me? Like, those are things that I'm going to be thinking about. And I'm going to think, well, do I care about myself? Do I have integrity? Am I showing up? Are my values aligning with what I want from somebody else? So I think it's like, really, it's turning it inward in a way. And I think that what you're sharing is exactly like where so many people go, and it's normal. And so I want to say that, first of all, it is such a normal thing, because I've seen it happen time and again, and I've had it happen at least, I think, two or three times in the times that I practice, where I've kind of been like, why am I practicing this stuff? Like, what is the purpose of this? What am I doing?
yeah, yeah, and it's like, but even in the sense of, um, well, the thing to be, to make sure that I'm not saying is that it's like I think while there isn't enough people kind of, I suppose, sorting themselves out, there's an overemphasis on shadow work and stuff like that, I think, as well, in that, to the point of where it's kind of forced into you that you're broken, you're something that needs to be fixed, something that's wrong, there's something wrong with you, sort that out. And like, to a point, there's all stuff we can work on. There's all stuff we can be better at. We can find our values. We can, show up for the world. We can say no when we should say no, and all that. But the fundamental kind of trope that we've been kind of fed from self-help and new age and stuff is that you're essentially broken, and that you need to fix yourself so that you're acceptable, or that, or whatever. And while I'm saying that, to look at underlying things, it's not to say because I'm broken. Well, maybe I am, but
You
not
don't
coming
look
from.
broken.
You should see me in the morning. I feel pretty broken,
Well, you are
but
seeing me in the morning.
just that not to swing the pendulum, I suppose, too far the other way as well, and even down to, I suppose, with your example of the relationship as well, you could even go one step further and go, well, what is it that I'm looking for that I feel a relationship is going to give me? What's the missing part of me that I feel? And it might be just, well, I like company and I just want that, but it might have some fundamental, oh, because my mother didn't love me and I have to, replace this with someone else. It could be, but it's worth looking at to see, is it a relationship I'm looking for, or is it just wanting someone to tell me that I'm okay,
Yeah, well,
to approve of me or something like that, and to
yeah,
look at that
what's
stuff.
the
But
fundamental intrinsic motivation that's going on?
yeah,
No, I agree with you. And I mean, I do think there's a difference between, toward like, oh, I got to fix myself. Like, I actually do a lot of, men's transformation work now. So, and one of the things that I share with my clients is that it's not about fixing, it's about integration. Like the parts of ourselves that are quote unquote in the shadow need to be heard and listened to and seen. Now, the way they come out sometimes may not be helpful, but if we look at that as a problem to fix, we're actually not connecting in
mm,
a very in the right way, I think. I think that it really comes down to integration. And where I look at magic with all that is, okay, well, how am I living again an integrated life? Am I living a life where I'm recognizing it's one life, soul led, all in? And by all in, I don't mean like, balls to the wall, like, oh, I got to like, work 80 hours a week. No, I mean like more along the lines of like this integrated thing of like, I'm not going to live a private life, a public life, and a secret life. I'm going to actually live into my integrity and be who I truly am. As best I can. And I'm not going to punish myself. I do see where like sometimes shadow work not done properly can become kind of like that thing to fix. And I've been on that journey too. Like I did a ton of internal work for a long, long time, and there was always more stuff to fix. And then one day I realized, it's not about fixing stuff. It's really about if I want to change something, yes, there may be some change from the inside out, but changing it for the right reasons and in a way that's actually kind to that little boy or whatever within instead of trying to punish him or make him into something else. Just find out about him and integrate him in.
and yeah, like, and another good word for that, other than integration, is like acceptance. Like this kind of sense that we're going to become a perfect person, or we're going to become, that's all through spirituality as well. Particularly, with the like theosophy kind of influences of this, that you're going to ascend, you're going to become a master of wisdom, you're on some sort of trajectory towards that, and this kind of notion of it's okay to be exactly where you are. And I love this kind of, and I hated it for a long while because it really annoyed me. This kind of idea of that the creation is the play of the divine, like Leela, it's called, it's from the Eastern thing, and I really disliked that for a long while because I felt like this is someone having a game that seems a bit sick, and because that's how I understood it. But it seems to be that that's not what when they say the play. What they mean is doing something only for the sake of doing it, not for some end goal. It's play for the sake of play. Like, so you play rather than to become a better person, rather than to earn some money, rather to then achieve something. It's just play for the play's sake. As a child plays, play for the play's sake. So this is occurring for the sake of it occurring, is the kind of a sense. And this kind of notion of that's strong in magic and strong in spirituality in general, is that you have to be almost constantly productive with your spirituality, that you have to be going somewhere, you have to be achieving something, you have to be becoming a living god, or you have to be, ascending in some way, or transcending, or moving up, becoming the all powerful, or in some way constantly alchematizing yourself into something better and better, because there's at the end, on the core of that is that because you're broken, that there's something wrong with you, or that you're not good enough as you are.
Yeah,
And this
not good
kind of
enough
just,
wound.
yeah, and just like go, well, okay, like let's be better people, but let's also accept all the seemingly bad stuff about us, rather than, as you were saying, rather than kind of forcing the angry teenager part of you away, or and trying to pretend it's not there, or work it out and go, yeah, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be angry, rather than kind of pulling back from, but just let's try not let's let's try to do it appropriately and in the right situations, And it's when you kind of stifle all of these things that it spills out at the wrong time, when you're shouting at your boss or, you know, at your kid or something like that, that it just because it bubbles up or whatever. But if you have it integrated into yourself, in theory, I've yet to integrate all my stuff, so I'm not coming from a place of having integrated, but that it's even in the bits I've done, you can go right. I understand it a bit, and I know from therapy, and I did a good bit of therapy. And one of the things was it was always told that you must have righteous anger towards the parts of yourself that are damaged, and like basically tell them to, get away and be really angry with them. And I was just saying, I don't want to do that. I've spent my entire life shouting at myself. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to welcome it in. I'm going to these dark, damaged things of all it's been told its entire existence is to. No, I don't know if I can curse on your podcast.
You can curse. You could
Yeah,
say fuck off.
yeah, it's to fuck off. Just fuck off. And it's like, no, that's why you're in the situation, right? This is the thing that is perpetuating what you're trying to fix something, and in doing and fixing it, you're perpetuating it. That seems to be a huge theme in a lot of the stuff we do, that the thing we do in order to try and solve something is the thing that exacerbates it or keeps it going, or in some way often causes the thing we're trying to get rid of. And it's like as if you have to do the complete 180-degree spin on it and go, no, it's not. It's integrate, it's accept it, it's understand who you are, where you're coming from, and whatever, rather than this constant thing of trying to become the perfect thing or trying to fix the broken thing. Just go, where are you? And just, be okay. But the whole world just tells you you're wrong. You're wrong to be where you are. You should be fixing yourself. You should be better. You should be doing more. You should be achieving more. You should be doing all of this stuff. Because that's because we live in a capitalist society, and the only way that
I
anything has any
know.
merit is, are you making any money? Is what
The
you're doing making you money?
the
And that's
thoughts
the
that
whole
went
thing.
through my head was like, that's such a grind when you said that, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, ugh, yeah. It's interesting because one of the things that I found is that my relationship with magic has changed over the years in large part because I've also kind of explored like what is it that I'm trying to get and where is it coming from? And sometimes it's been that metric of outward success, like I have to be better than this person, or I have to have, this much money, or I have to do all of these things. And it was like in 2017 that I had this really important lesson where I was doing a lot of magic to make my business successful, but I made some bad decisions. And I ended up having to shut my business down and go back to work. And it was a hard moment.
I remember your posts at the time talking about that. I do remember that. Yeah.
And I was just like, and I was kind of like one of those moments of kind of going through and being like, well, what's the point of doing magic? But it taught me a really important lesson. Like I shifted my focus from I'm trying to impose my will on the world to I'm going to surrender to the experience. And I will fully admit I've had to learn that lesson again and again and again. But lately, I've been reading this book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, which I highly recommend to all of you out there. Because it's just this really fascinating book about this man who basically just decided to surrender to whatever life brought him. And not from a place of just like laying on the ground and being passive, but no, more along the lines of, okay, something came along and he would just say, and it would be like, yes. And he was saying yes from what not from a place of ego, but from like just like a place of sovereign awareness and being able to surrender to that. And I think that that's a large part of where my magic has been slowly but surely moving toward is as a practice is just surrendering to the experience and allowing like doing the magical work, but not from a place of like I'm trying to get something to happen, but more from a place of I'm putting my stuff out there and I'm allowing to come whatever comes my way. And I'll take it as feedback, but I'm not trying to get to a specific outcome so much as I'm making this part of my life design journey. And so it's been a fascinating shift because it's not about doing magic all the time either. A lot of times it's more like well, I'm in the right current right now, and if things happen to work out the way they are. That's great. And if something comes along where there's a bit of difficulty, I might use magic to help with that, but I might do something else because there's so many different things to do out there, and I have the power to respond. I don't have power over everything around me, but the one thing I do have power over, and this is something I've really come to realize, is I have power over how I respond. And I can either react or I can make a decision that's like, okay, like here's the data, here's everything that's going on, here's what I could do and make the best possible choice. And that may not seem very magical, but I think when we orient to a different perspective around like surrender and being open to the idea that the one thing we can control is our response, it actually can open a lot of doors in ways we didn't expect.
I just spent, and I'd be interested in how you traverse this issue that I had with surrender. Um, on a couple of occasions, I did the exact thing of just surrendering entirely to the world, and it's very hard to for me to navigate between surrendering and acquiescing or giving up, which. But in the sense of that, I was doing saying yes to everything. What I found, what I was getting was more of things I didn't want to do, and people using me and mining me as a resource.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot of kind of discerning. If you say yes to everything, you end up doing an awful lot of other people's dirty work and an awful lot of other people's stuff. And people begin to know that you will say yes. And so you end up in a worse place. I did anyway. So, how do you then, by surrendering and saying yes to everything, how do you not say yes to all the stuff that makes it worse then? And what way are you picking? If you're saying yes to everything, how are you not ending up just in a bad place?
So I think that there's an element of sovereignty that we need to explore, which is like with this, which is what am I saying yes to? The thing that I've learned is first of all is to say actually to say yes to myself,
Okay.
to choose myself first. And that may sound contradictory, so I'm going to unpack this a little bit. I spent a lot of my life being a codependent, people-pleasing, approval-seeking man, a nice guy, you know? And it came out in ways where I would say yes to relationships that I didn't really want to be in. I would say yes to things that other people wanted. And so I get you, like that's fully a real thing. And I think that happens a lot of times. I think the key difference is like, where am I saying yes from? So one of the things that I really looked at in my life in terms of surrender is that first of all, it's like, well, am I saying yes to myself? A lot of times I was saying no to me. I wasn't in touch with what I really wanted. I wasn't honoring all the different parts in me. And a lot of times then what would happen is I would say yes to something, I would feel resentment and it would come out sideways. And instead of speaking up and being honest about it and having a conversation that needed to be had, I would just continue on. And so that does lead. And that's a form of surrender that's not healthy in my, that's abdication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For me, what I've discovered is that when I learned to start saying yes to myself, first of all, I started with a self-love and self-respect practice. So many people don't do this. And anyone who thinks that this is new agey, it's not. It's just honestly about caring about yourself and loving yourself. It was looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. Then it was starting to exercise in a way that felt really good and taking the time to like research my diet and all these things, like starting to say yes to myself in all these different ways and surrendering to that yes to that awareness, like I'm going to take care of myself and respect myself. Then it came down to really recognizing all the ways that when I wasn't, all the ways I was trying to stay in control. When I said yes to other people, a lot of times I was trying to grip the steering wheel as tight as possible. I thought I had to have it together. I thought I had to have things figured out. And so it'd be like, I'm saying yes to this person because if I say no or I say I don't know, like I'm admitting I don't have it all figured out. And so I realized how much of that was an ego game
Mm.
that I was playing. So I stopped doing that. And so it's not that I say yes to everyone around me or to things like that. It's that I'm saying yes to myself. And what I'm doing is I'm recognizing that, again, when a situation comes up, I have the power to respond and the responsibility. In fact, the word responsibility, we break it down, it's the word response and ability. So if I have the ability to respond, then a situation comes up, I can choose whether or not I'm going to say yes to that situation, or I can choose to say no. And if I'm saying no, it's because I'm saying yes to myself first. Now, so where's the surrender part in all this, you may be wondering, because great question. Well, the surrender part in all this is that I'm surrendering my need to be in control. And
Okay.
I'll give you a great example. Last year in August of 2025, I left my job and I was going to go back to school for therapy. And I realized within a week of leaving that job that I didn't, that I had really applied for therapy school because I needed an escape plan. I didn't want to stay in that job. I hated it. I wasn't being honest with myself. Okay. See, I was gripping the steering wheel, but I wasn't being honest about just saying, like, look, I don't like this job and I need to figure out like what I really want to do with my life. So I dropped out of I dropped out of therapy school. So now I don't have a job. I don't have a therapy school. Talk about like in a situation that a lot of people would be like, are you crazy? And I was like, no, I'm going to go on a journey. I had some money saved up, so I could do it.
Mm.
And I wasn't, and to all you out there, it's not like I'm like rich or anything like that. But no, I was, I saved some money up because I was planning to be in graduate school. So I went on this journey of integration work, for one thing, like healing my relationship with the feminine, doing some other things along those lines. But a large part of it was really learning to say yes to myself, like what really is important to me. And I can tell you that there have been a lot of times this last year and change that I haven't known where I was going. I haven't known for sure what I was going to do. I was very much surrendering to the rhythm of life as it came through instead of grabbing onto the steering wheel and being like, I got to get a job. I got to figure these things out. I got to do all this other stuff. And here I am now. It's the end of November, and I'm definitely in a different place where, as I've learned to surrender more and more, I found that things have lined up for me. And not even like overt displays of magical work or anything else. I've just surrendered to saying yes to myself, and I've surrendered at the same time the need to be in control. My car got hit by a deer in August, and I was stranded in a town like 7 hours away from home, didn't know anyone there, and I just surrendered the need to be in control, and I had so many acts of kindness and help come through in ways that I can tell you were magical that I wasn't doing any magic for it though, Tommy. I was just surrendering to the experience, and it's the same thing like of late. Like I started reading this book, The Surrender Experiment, and it really kind of helped me to see like a further refinement of this. And I felt more grounded and calm and present and aware in the act of surrender. But I'm not surrendering to what everyone else wants. I'm surrendering
Yeah.
to what I want. And I'm also choosing the way I respond so that if someone comes to me and says, this is what I want, I say, well, what's the data here? What's the information? And yes. And if I'm saying yes, I'm saying yes to myself first. I'm honoring myself so that I can honor that person, so that there's no resentment. There's no feeling taken advantage of. Because I feel you on that. I've had that happen before. And that's not something I ever want to have happen again. And I think it first starts with our ability to find our sovereignty and then to surrender the need to be in control and be open to the experience, but at the same time, really be aware, well, what is it? I have the choice to respond. I won't have the control. I can say yes to something, but I won't always have that control, but I can choose to respond.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really perfectly explained. Exactly the idea of as mostly presented with surrender or surrendering to the divine or any of these things. That it's mostly done is to have all of your decisions external to you, so that you're not making a decision. It's so you're allowing the world to tell you who you are and what to do and all of that. But the idea, I really like the idea of surrendering to control. Because you don't have control, because clearly we don't. To well, to some extent you have some control, but in a bigger picture you don't. And it's kind of very similar to the whole kind of notion in the Bhagavad Gita, where it's talking about, you can do the thing, do whatever you want, but you surrender to God in the sense of you do it not for the achievement of it, but for the glory of God. And that sounds a bit hokey, but there's kind of something in it, in the sense of that you get to make the art, or the song, or write the poem, or whatever it is. But once it's done, you don't get to decide what happens with it then. You're not in charge of it then. you hand it over in a sense. And I know you could get into marketing and you could get into that, but as a kind of a theory of your job as a creative or as an artist or as a poet or whatever dancer is to dance, and then all of the rest you hand over to the divine. You hand over the control of it, because even if you do, so many films have or movies have had huge budgets and huge marketing budgets and all this, and it still doesn't do anything. So there's still, no matter how much money you throw at something, it's not a guarantee that it'll work out. So you have to surrender your control, but you get to make your art. You get to dance your dance. You get to do that. I think that's surrendering to that. If that's what you're talking about, surrendering, I'm all for that. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing. And then you let it go. You let it be whatever it is.
You let it go and you let it be whatever it is. And I mean, I think I've given up the notion that like I need to reach a certain level of success in life or things like that. Like I'm definitely open to doing the best that I can, showing up with all my heart and everything else and giving that to whatever it is that I'm doing that I'm saying a full-hearted yes to. And like I'll use an example. I ran a little experiment yesterday for my e-list where I shared a chat GPT, a custom GPT that I created called Sigillarum with people to run an experiment. Um, and I got like 9 or 10 responses. I didn't expect any responses, but I loved it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I got to share it. And that for me right there, that was magical. Like I got to share that and to have that experience with them and share something with them where they could try that and see and they get a little free gift if they do it and share their input with me. So there's that. But it's like, success, the idea of success, like, okay, like I'm gonna get $1 million, me, of course, making fun of the one movie, but like, I could care less about that anymore. I think it's the more we get attached to these ideas as to like how our lives need to be from the outside in, the less I think we lose touch with the fundamental magic of our beingness.
That's it
And
exactly, because when we make
yeah.
magic out of getting the thing, or whatever, then you miss the actual magic, the actual thing of although, one of the things I think the problems we run into is that we all use very similar words or the same words like magic or occult or whatever it is, ascension, surrender, as we find, but we all kind of mean very different things, and we kind of talk as if they all mean the same thing. That when I say magic and you say magic, that, oh, we think we're talking about the same things. They're not necessarily. Um, but it's just the wonder or the awe or the numinous or that kind of sense of belonging, or in a kind of a new age hippie way, the love of the universe or something like that. Um, which is, it's part of the experience of it all. But it's like if you're constantly counting on, making it productive. I must have the love at all times. Or I must have the thing at all times. Whatever way you're doing it, it kind of, it can make you miss all the stuff because you think haven't accumulated enough things. I mean that, like, if you look into there's a great documentary, Hypernormalization. It's an Adam Curtis documentary from years back, but it talks about how that was manufactured, how the people didn't want things that they didn't need, and now we all we do is want things that we don't need, and it's a symptom of of culture and of of modern life and stuff like that, to be perpetually unhappy because you buy things, and it's I think that's crept into our spiritual life and our magic life, in that it's become about productivity in that long way, getting things, trying to fix things, by
Fix
adding more
ourselves.
stuff. Yeah, by shiny, by the get the new shiny thing, get the new thing, all this stuff, rather than going, what is the core thing I want? And it's by if you're anything like me, I'm sure I'm not that unique. It's probably very simple things where you just want connection and love and to feel desired, or to to feel joy, or to feel worthy, or all of these things. And you're doing all of these other rubbish things in order to try to fill this hole. And but in doing those things, they're perpetuating the things, keeping you further away, so that you're never going to solve the underlying condition of the thing. Um,
You hit on something really, you hit a couple things really essential. And the first thing I want to say is that I think that in modern society, we've sacrificed community for commodity,
yeah,
which is like really we've lost something fundamental. And it's a funny thing that like in the last few years, I think a large part of my shift has been that the more that I got involved in different communities, the martial arts community, the men's transformational community, not the manosphere folks, I'm not into that, but into like the healthy version of men's work. Um,
So like the Richard Bly stuff and all that.
yeah. Richard Bly, things like that. Mankind Project, stuff along those lines, and that's the work that I do with my clients as well for the men's transformational work. But the more that I found community and connection, the more I realized that I wasn't alone, that everyone else to some degree or another is going through the same challenges, the same struggles in some form or another. And that seems like a general statement, but like when I can genuinely say that I can hop onto a Zoom and hear, different men share like, oh yeah, I'm really struggling right now with X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yeah, I've struggled with that. How wonderful it feels to realize that a large part of what we really just need is connection and community, and we can have that, and we don't even have to pay a lot of money for it or any money for it. We just have to take that singular brave act of reaching out and connecting with someone with genuine curiosity. I mean, right now, that's kind of the conversation you and I are having here. Part of it was like, I want to get to know this guy better. This is some really cool stuff, and getting to, that he's writing and sharing. And I really could feel that journey that you were on, like in my own, like resonate with it. Not exactly be like, oh, I understand Tommie's journey, because I don't. That's your journey, but I can appreciate and relate to it and say, I'm not alone. And and I want
We
him
have.
to know that he's not alone.
I very much appreciate you reaching out. I really do, and I don't. I'm not just saying that to be nice on your podcast. I genuinely do feel that. I think we have like one of the things with the internet is that like while it has separated us on so many levels, um, there is a like it's not. Let's not throw any baby out with the bathwater. We do not have this conversation without the internet. The thing that's dividing us is also the thing that, in its own way, has made it so much easier to connect in so many ways. And some of you know some of my greatest conversations with people were really connected one on one has been over the internet. Now, some of them have been in real life too. I'm not saying it's exclusive, but to kind of dismiss the entire picture of something, because of there's going to be bad bits and good bits. And I mean, the internet's definitely going to change over the next while because it's, the dead internet theory is no longer a theory. It's definitely something that's happening. It's bots talking to bots, talking to bots. And there's going to be a return in some way of having to go face to face with people, particularly when the AI video becomes just too good that you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Looking at YouTube now and like the amount of ChatGPT scripts that have been read by an AI narration using AI images, and just convert that into now it's someone who looks like they're doing a vlog and talking in the room, and it's as lifelike, and it's just people are eventually just going to go, I think I'll talk to a real human actually, and the only way to know that is by walking up to someone or going to a physical space with people. Because there's certainly going to be a point that someone's going to be in a group chat and it'll be a number of real people and there'll be someone who's not a real person and you're not going to know, and you'll find out at some stage later, and it'll be horrifying the first time. In the same way, if you have seen the first time you look at a video or something and you don't realize it's AI. That's happened to me once or twice recently. I mean, you cop it. You go, oh, I've been fooled for the first 10 seconds of this, and you go, right, that's only going to get worse. So the connection thing, all the kind of positive connection stuff, particularly say around the pandemic where everyone kind of, started playing games with each other or, getting online and just hanging out and doing all that stuff. I'd say that was kind of a blip in the whole thing. But it's, at the same time, as I say, it affords us, like me and you, to have a conversation that we would never have, ever have.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think that's where we use that discernment, like, okay, is this, and yeah, I agree with you. I see more proliferation. It's kind of fascinating to observe how AI has changed and is changing things on many different levels. And like, again, choosing how do we respond to that? What do we do with that, if anything? And there's lots of different arguments. I don't really want to get into it right now as far as that goes, but I think it does really come right down to like connection. And maybe that's the most magical thing that we could possibly find is just genuine, real connection. And with the world around us, with each other, with the spirits, if that's your thing or whatever else, but finding that and cultivating it and nourishing it instead of being like, I gotta get the next thing. Because I'll just say this, and you see right back here, there's a bunch of books on the shelf. It's like, folks, I can't read all those books at the same time. My dad once said to me, and it was a bit of wisdom, I didn't realize at the time. He's like, why do you have so many books? He's like, you can't read all of them at the same time. And I'm like, no, that's true. And it is true. I can't read them all at the same time. I'm steadily working my way through. But every time I get a new book, I'm reminded of that. And I'm like, I still have so many books I need to read. Now, granted, reading books brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction. I want to be very clear about that. But I think at the same time, it is that like what you said earlier, like at what point does it become like I'm trying to fill something up within myself versus this is something I'm doing because it just brings me that joy and I'm connecting through the words to someone through the ages.
Yeah, I think sometimes I find when, say, I buy a book or I want to sign up for someone's online course or something like that. It's like as if I'm trying to connect to something. I want something. Is this the book that's going to give me the secret, not not the Ron the Burn thing, but like the glimpse into the divine or into life or creation or something like that. It's almost like it's not necessarily the book. It's there's a state I'm particularly looking for or whatever. And I love books. I have shelves and shelves that you can't see, but they're all there. And I've read a lot of them, and I am one of these people who read like 6 books at one time, but I still can't read all of them at the one time. But I think like please, anyone listening, don't think that I'm saying that you shouldn't want the things. I mean, I think it's perfectly fine to want the things. I want the things. I like the things. I get an awful lot of satisfaction out of things. Um, but it's just I suppose in one way knowing why you're doing this, to have a look at like, am I reading this book because it gives me joy, and I'm engaging in it for no other reason because the act of reading is pleasing me, or am I trying to fill a hole that this book cannot fill, or am I reading this because I feel I'm broken, or am I trying to do something, engage with something that's going to make me better. I've stopped being able to read fiction for so long because I felt I should be doing something more productive. That
Mm.
I should be learning. I should always be doing something and it ruined it because any time I tried to read fiction, like, you should be reading a proper book. Like I really had to train myself, to. And even now I struggle, but I force myself. I force myself to read fiction. I force myself to enjoy myself. But it's a very easy trap to get into, to be constantly only doing things to get somewhere, rather than just the whole that thing that we were talking about earlier about the play doing something just for its own sake. Um,
We need
and not
it. It makes us dull
exactly. Yeah,
otherwise.
yeah. Well, not even that it makes it wrecks our mental health as it's
Yeah.
clear. Because if you turn everything like even you can't even have a hobby now because you have to turn that into a side hustle. The hobbies have become a second job. And
Or
it's
third or fourth.
or third or fourth or whatever. Like there's very little that anyone, and even I find I've tried to engage with that, to just do something that's for its own sake, not to try to do anything with, and how easily and how quickly that could be turned into, another way to achieve something, and you just have to go, just step back. Um, but yeah, it's just that thing I was saying recently, in if it was the last post I did or the one before one of them, because I did a series of them all together, so they're all kind of conflated in my brain. But it's the idea of that if my life was better, would I still be doing magic? And then to
Mm.
look at that and kind of go, is that the reason I'm engaging with magic, or is that the sole thing I'm looking at magic is to make my life, to fix my life, to make it better? Because if I had X Y Z, would I care about magic? Would I be sitting there in front of the the Ganesha statue, asking him, pleading with him to remove my obstacles if I didn't have any obstacles? Um, and if that's the only reason I'm coming to magic, then that's not great. It's because I want something. I want something out of it. Or I want to fix something, or I want to do something. Because that's the stuff. Then you're focused on that. You miss the stuff. You miss the actual, the wonder, the thing that we talked about earlier on, and that's unfortunate, and that's something I'm glad I've noticed that I'm doing. It's that whole thing of like using magic as a like a vending machine or a slot machine, or you put in the money, give me my thing. I said the prayer, give me my thing. It's like that's not what spirit work is, you know. But that's what it largely has become. Um, do novena, get the healing, or say the right prayers, the right mantras, and get the thing rather than for the sake of doing it. And it's not. I'm not good at this. I just don't feel that I'm preaching in this way. This is the thing I'm working on: is to try to do the thing for only for the sake of doing the thing. And if that's not bringing you joy, then don't do the thing. You know what I mean? That's not to say to run away from hard work. I'm not saying that, but it's like if you're doing something just for the sake of getting something, rather than the experience of it being something that's worth it in itself. That's probably the best way to describe it. Is the experience worth doing just for the experience of doing it? Um, I think that's a far healthier way to look at things. But
Mm.
it's not as sexy, it's not as exciting as doing a sigil and winning the lotto, as promised in I suppose any number of different places. But I don't know.
Wow,
You were
though. I, I
yeah.
I love that. Like what you said though, like that is so true. Like if we're not doing it for the sake of bringing a sense of joy in our lives, like why are we doing it? You were starting to say something though.
Yeah, so you were saying that you currently you still engage in a daily practice or whatever. Can you tell me about that, or is that just something that you'd rather?
No, I'd be happy to. I have a practice called Sphere of Art that I do. I learned it from R.J. Stewart. He's written a few books on it. It's something where it's essentially I memorized it. It's essentially you're creating a magical circle, but it's really a sphere. You're calling in the archangels, you're calling in the spirits that you work with, and you're creating just this this sphere. But I'm not creating the sphere like from a thaumaturgic, like I want to get something. I'm creating it more as like a theurgic activity. And afterwards, what I end up doing is I end up meditating. I have some alchemical substances as well that I created and worked with over the course. I actually started this in 2017. So this is kind of the thing. This was like back then, this is the root. Like I shifted toward that practice. And I read his books and I'm like, I want to do something different. I'm going to try his way of doing things and just see what happens. I'm curious. And so I did. And I got the alchemical substances. I worked with them and so I still work with this stuff, but it's not done from the perspective of like I'm trying to get something. Now, I sometimes will do some results-based magic after I've created the sphere, and it's great for that, like in terms of doing it, but that's not the main reason I do it. I mainly just do it because it just brings me this deep sense of joy and connection with the powers that be in my life and with everything. And it brings me back into myself, to that sacred yes. And so like when I'm meditating afterwards, I always one of the things I do is I'm like, I surrender today to whatever comes through so that I can show up in full presence with whatever comes through that's going to honor that. And that's again led to a lot of profound things for me. So that's my daily practice. It's really, and of course I don't really consider this magic per se, but I will throw it in there. I do some Qigong and martial arts each day as well. That's kind of separate. That's usually first thing in the morning. And then I do the Sphere of Art midday. And then if there are reasons when there is a reason to do magic, I will share that the way that I approach my practical magic is very much different nowadays. I mean, I still do some stuff with candles and things like that occasionally, but most part I do a lot of art magic. I use the act of art to create the magical working, and that seems to work really well for me. And a large part of it is because I get into the joy of creating the art itself. So I think that again, that comes down to finding the joy in the doing as opposed to I'm going to get the outcome. Like I have an outcome in mind and I put it, seed it into it, but then, I just have the joy of doing it and I let it go. And then, and now I've got some beautiful art on my wall or sending some beautiful art out to someone else if I want. So that's pretty much what my spiritual practice is nowadays.
Great, really good. Yeah. Um, do you do? We recently did an experiment on, or we're in the middle of doing an experiment on my Discord, where the people are saying that they can't get the practical magic really to engage in the way they used to. I goes, well, what if we do it just exclusively for other people, and not in a, you know, gun for hire type way, just like something. So we've been kind of messing a bit with that. Have you? I've never really ever done magic for other people. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just not something I find particularly appealing. But have you done that sort of stuff much? And what way do you
So
find it
I
effective? Effective?
I've done some magic for people where they've hired me. Um,
Mm.
that's kind of its own thing. And that's been pretty effective for the people that I've worked with. Maybe not everyone's been happy, but most of the people have. And yeah, that's what it is. But magic for other people for the sake of just doing it, occasionally, I I really kind of weigh that in a little bit on, well, first of all, is this something that really is that even the best solution for that person? Or is that really, and who am I to even say what the solution is? I
Yeah, yeah,
mean, I'll talk with the person about it though, and come up with, and we'll kind of come to some things. I mean, I've done some stuff to help some people out, sometimes because they've been too close to the situation, and what they really needed is somebody who's further away. And I think that that's like a good reason if you're going to do magic for somebody to do it is like if you're because you're further away. Because I think sometimes what gets in the way of people like doing their own magic is they're too close to the situation and they don't know how to remove. They don't know how to redirect their. I'm not going to say remove, but redirect their emotions in a way that's effective
yeah.
and uses it. I've learned to do that over the years, so I don't like when I do magic for myself, I'm not too close to the situation anymore because I've learned how to redirect my emotions and all the other stuff into the magic to do that. But sometimes I'll work with somebody where I will do some stuff, but I always first get permission and ask them, and I run it by them. I think consent is key.
Mhm.
And having been the person who's occasionally made the mistake of doing magic where there wasn't consent involved, um, I think that that's just as much a violation, even if it's beneficial to the other person. I think it's a violation in some ways, like because you're
Like
not
a healing
honoring,
or something like that that they didn't ask for.
yeah, or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to recognize that. I mean, I've made that mistake. I'm not gonna again, here we don't pretend that we're perfect or everything else. Like I've made plenty of mistakes over the years with magic and other things, and that's what it is. You learn from it. I hopefully you learn from it. I've learned from it anyway. But so I check with other people if I'm going to do that, and I do think that that can be a really wonderful way to give and build community when it's done for that reason.
Mm.
Um, and there is a difference between doing it for that reason and doing it as a quote unquote gun for hire. And again, I'm not speaking as someone who occasionally is hired for that purpose. I have no
Yeah.
problem doing it. I mean, if that's what somebody wants, usually I'll end up doing some consulting with them and all that other fun stuff. But I think that there's a very real difference between that and doing it for community. And I keep coming back to this more and more is that really it's more and more what motivates me for anything that I do is community. Because when we have genuine connection with people and we take the time to create community, that's where the real magic is. And it takes a lot, it takes everyone involved. They have to want that. It has to be important to them. But if it is important to you, it changes your life. Because you're not with people. you, it kind of goes back to what you're talking about, why people buy things. It's kind of similar to what I see with a lot of relationships now, where people get involved with somebody because they're trying to extract something from them. Like I want that thing from that person, or I want that person to give me X, or I want that person to fuck me because maybe having sex with them is going to be better than the sex I've had with all the other people I've had sex with. Extraction is not community. It's just commodity. It's treating somebody as an object. Community is I want to connect with that person and I'm not attached to an outcome. I'm not attached to whether or not they're going to have sex with me or they're going to be a romantic interest, but I want to or whatever. I want to connect with that person because I'm genuinely curious about that person and like whatever ends up happening, I can be good with that. And maybe nothing happens, but at least I made the effort to connect from a good place.
Yeah, not trying to get something out of it, just doing it for the sake of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going to do magic for other people for that reason, like that can be a really good thing. And again, We all have to figure out like there is something fundamental about being able to take care of the base needs, like the basic needs of life, you know. I mean, one of the reasons why I do magic for hire is because like this is part of how I pay the bills now. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a reasonable thing to do. But be clear on like why you're doing what you're doing and what you're striving for. And I know for me, like one of the big things that I've kind of come away with too is like I don't need to get to like a certain outcome that says I have to be in this particular bracket. What I really want is to be able to meet my needs and be of service to the communities that I'm part of. And like if people want to buy something like a class or whatever, great. Happy to do that. But then I also want to make sure that I'm genuinely of service with that class, that I answer their questions, that I'm there for them and everything else, that I help them on with whatever they're doing, and that it's not just and that it's nurturing the relationship because there may have been an element of consumer, okay, fair enough, but that we're still nurturing the relationship from a place of community. Like I actually do care about this person. I think if we shifted our way of thinking around that, that it would change our relationship with money as well. And, you know, money doesn't want to be used any more than people want to be used. It just wants to be appreciated. And if we choose to appreciate it from a place of community, then we open a lot of doors.
Yeah, that's yeah. Nothing I would add or subtract to that. Um, I have to go,
I
but
do too. So I want to
yeah,
say,
yeah.
I want to wrap up here. So, where can people find you?
If you go to tommiekelly.com, and that's Tommie, that'll bring you to my Patreon, which is not an immediate sell. There's loads of free stuff on there. It's just kind of the easiest hub to put everything. Um, of course, you can send me money if you want. Or adventuresinwoowoo.com, which has all the blogs and has all the information about the 40 servants, and everything I've ever done is on that. So, one of those two places. I'm not really on social media anymore. I'm kind of on a blue sky, but maybe I check it once a week. But not in any of the other places, just because enough.
I hear you.
Oh, and
Well,
Substack. I'm on. So like I'm doing
that's how
stuff.
we found each other, or at
Yeah.
least that's how I found you this time around. Well, Tommy, I want to thank you for making
Thank
some
you.
time to chat, and it was just awesome to connect with you. And I
Yeah,
look forward to
great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I got an awful lot from it, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, brother. All right, and to all of you out there, take care of yourselves, honor yourselves, and move forward, and that will bring you your magic.